Bela Kiss. Bela Kiss was a notorious Hungarian serial killer whose final fate is a matter of mystery. He was a tinsmith and an amateur astronomer. Rumors suggest he was also fond of the occult arts. He frequently advertised his services as a fortune teller and matrimonial agent in the newspaper. In 1912, Kiss's second wife apparently abandoned him, so he hired a Mrs. Jakobek as a housekeeper. Immediately, the woman noticed that he corresponded with several women who required his services. Some of the females would go to his house, but the housekeeper never got to meet them. Kiss also had a rare habit of collecting metal drums. When the police questioned him about them, the fortune teller claimed he was gathering gasoline in preparation for the upcoming war. But in 1914, Kiss enlisted in World War I and left his house in Mrs. Jakobek's care. Soon after his departure, Kiss's landlord called the police to report the metal drums. Soldiers arrived at the house, and despite the housekeeper's protests, opened one of the drums. Kiss had hidden the 24 women missing inside them. Puncture marks in their necks led investigators to believe the man was practicing vampirism. Mrs. Jakobek also showed the police a room that Kiss had forbidden her from ever entering. Inside, they found the letters he had exchanged with 74 women, as well as books with disturbing images. The police discovered the fortune teller defrauded middle-aged women with no close relatives. These women were looking for marriage and would send him money. The military was ordered to arrest Kiss, but he was nowhere to be found. It was thought that he had fallen as a prisoner of war, but this couldn't be verified because his last name was extremely common. 2 years later, Detective Chief Karoli Negi received word that Kiss was a patient in a Serbian hospital. When the detective reached the place, the sly criminal had already placed another soldier's body in his bed. Throughout the following 2 decades, Kiss was allegedly spotted in Romania and Turkey. Some assumed he had swapped his identity with another soldier and faked his death. In 1932, a detective was positive he spotted the man outside the subway in Times Square, New York City. But Kiss was always a step ahead. Every lead the detectives followed was a dead end, and the man virtually disappeared to never pay for his crimes. Mary Celeste. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste remains as one of the world's greatest nautical mysteries. The ship sailed from New York City to Genoa, Italy on November 7, 1872. Aboard were 7 crewmen, the captain's wife, and their 2-year-old daughter. For the next 2 weeks, the Mary Celeste braved terrible weather. Its final log was recorded at 8 a.m. on November 25th. By then, the ship was near Santa Maria Island in the Azores. The Del Gratia ship followed the same route as the Mary Celeste, but it departed 8 days later. On December 4th, Captain Morehouse detected a ship moving erratically and headed towards the Del Gratia. The crew couldn't see anybody on deck, and nobody was replying to their signals. When the crew boarded the Mary Celeste, they noticed the lifeboat was missing. However, all the possessions and supplies were still left on the vessel. The sails and rigging were damaged, the hatches near the cockpit were open, and the compass was broken. The interior cabins were wet, and everything pointed to an orderly evacuation of the vessel. Maritime law stated that a salvor was entitled to the rescued vessel and cargo, depending on the salvaging danger. The crew of the Del Gratia went to court to demand their part of the money, and after no evidence of foul play, they received $46,000. The Mary Celeste's crew's disappearance later became famous thanks to a sensationalist account written by a young Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. His tale started the rumor that a man named Septimus Goring, who bore a deep hatred of the white race, hijacked the ship and took it to Western Africa. Another account published in the Strand magazine proposed that the crew had been attacked by sharks while in a swimming competition at sea. Other tales say that the crew found gold and silver in the ship, which they took aboard the lifeboat to hide in Spain. But what really made the crew abandon a seaworthy ship is still unknown. D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper holds a special place in history as the only person to successfully commit piracy on a traveling aircraft. On November 24, 1971, Cooper purchased a one-way ticket on Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. The man was wearing a business suit with a black tie and white shirt. After takeoff, Cooper handed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Then he whispered to her, quote, "Miss, you'd better look at this note. I have a bomb." The pilots phoned Cooper's demands to the Seattle-Tacoma Airport Air Traffic Control. He asked for $20,000, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck in Seattle to refuel the aircraft upon arrival. His demands were accepted. The FBI gathered 10,000 unmarked $20 bills. Most were marked with a serial number beginning with the letter L, issued by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. They made a microfilm photograph of each of them. The police also collected parachutes with manually operated ripcords from a skydiving school. The plane landed at the airport in Seattle, where Cooper collected the money and the parachutes. While the aircraft was refueled, he ordered the pilots to set a path towards Mexico City with a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. A pilot, co-pilot, flight attendant, and a flight engineer joined Cooper, while 5 fighter aircraft followed them. At 8 p.m., Cooper gathered the crew in the cockpit. The plane was flying as low and slow as possible. Suddenly, a light flashed in the cockpit, signaling that the aft air stair apparatus was activated. The crew then felt a change in air pressure as the aft door opened, and Cooper jumped from the rear stairs. Nobody actually saw the man jump from the plane. The pilots following the hijacked aircraft didn't see anything and couldn't pinpoint where Cooper had fallen. Researchers estimated that he jumped while the aircraft was flying through a heavy rainstorm over the Lewis River. Search patrols sent to Cooper's presumed landing zone couldn't find the man or his equipment. U.S. Attorney General John N. Mitchell released the serial numbers of the bills to the general public. Still, no genuine bills were found until 1980, when an 8-year-old boy found a part of the ransom in a sandy riverbank on the Columbia River. The investigation on the case was suspended until July 8, 2016, with no concrete evidence on the hijacker's whereabouts or real identity. Ray Gricar. Defense attorney Ray Gricar went missing in 2005 under mysterious circumstances. It's suspected his disappearance is linked to the unsolved case of Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan Luna. Still, the lack of evidence makes it difficult to know exactly what happened to him. Grikar served as the district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, where he was re-elected 4 times, from 1985 until 2005. He married twice and adopted a baby girl with his first wife. The lawyer was deeply affected by the death of his older brother Roy, who took his own life in 1996. The mystery began on April 15, 2005, when Grikar was on a road trip. Before noon, he called his girlfriend, Patty Fornicola. He told her he was driving through the Brush Valley area northeast of Center Hall. Grikar was supposed to return to his house that same day. When he failed to appear by evening, his girlfriend reported the disappearance to the police. The next day, his Mini Cooper and cell phone were found in a parking lot. His laptop, keys, and wallet were nowhere to be found. The police searched the Susquehanna River to no avail. The sniffer dog's attitude suggested he might have gotten in another car, but no evidence was discovered. After examining his home's computer, the police found web searches on how to destroy a hard drive. The lawyer's laptop was discovered in July by fishermen. Months later, the wrecked hard drive of the computer also turned up in the river. It was believed Grikar followed the steps of his older brother, since his car appeared in the nearby area to where the man previously took his life. However, others suspected foul play. Before disappearing, Grikar had been involved in a police bust of a heroin dealing ring connected with the disappearance and death of Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan Luna. Grikar had also announced his retirement after refusing to press charges in the famous Jerry Sandusky sexual abuse case. Some suspect Grikar's computer contained evidence of a broader scandal and that he was silenced to protect influential figures. MV Joyita. The MV Joyita was a merchant vessel found partly submerged near Fiji in 1955, 600 miles away from her planned route. There were no signs of her 25 passengers and crew, and the radio had been left set to the international distress signal. 4 tons of cargo were also missing. Something awful must have happened, as the engine was found piled with mattresses and a doctor's bag contained bloody rags. What made it even more unusual is that all the clocks had frozen at 10:25, almost as if some sort of shock had knocked them out. The lifeboats were gone, despite the ship's design, which supposedly made her unsinkable. Still, no evidence of the crew has ever appeared again. An inquiry on the incident concluded that the crew's disappearance was, quote, inexplicable on the evidence submitted. Some hypothesized that Captain Miller was injured during a minor flood on board, explaining the bloody bandages found. The crew may have panicked without the captain and might have taken off on the lifeboats. The media reported accounts of witnesses saying that the crew might have been abducted after passing through a fleet of Japanese fishing boats or still active Japanese forces from World War II. What really happened to the MV Joyita is still a source of controversy and mystery.